In today's video, we'll be learning how to use FaceGen Artist Pro. We're going to go through the whole program in this part, in part 1. And then in subsequent parts, which is part 2 and 3, I'm going to show you how to fix the problems that come with FaceGen Artist Pro so you can make the best use of this tool. So the two reasons why I invested in this program is because I had two problems. Problem number one, I need to have unique character faces. I can't just go and take character faces from the DAZSTUDIO store or from any other store and use them in my graphic novel. I need to have my own IP, my own intellectual property. So that's why I'm creating unique faces using this. And the second problem I had is I wanted to create a reward for my Kickstarter campaign. And this reward is basically your likeness in book 2. So anybody who goes and pledges for that reward on the Kickstarter campaign, their likeness will be in book 2. I've already got 2 slots for that. So if that's something you're interested in, if you're interested in a superhero story that's going to entertain you, empower you and inspire you, link is in the description down below for that. Go and sign up to the Kickstarter waitlist. We will be going live in 2024 and that campaign will be going live in 2024. So really excited for that. Let's jump into this tutorial on how to use FaceGen Artist Pro. So the first tab we're going to be looking at is the Create tab here. And now underneath the Create tab, we've got Photo tab, New tab and Scan tab. I'm going to start off with the Scan tab here. We're going to go here. I'm going to work our way from right to left. So Scan tab here. In this Scan tab, what you can do is get a mesh or a 3D scan from another software such as ZBrush or Blender or whatever 3D modeling program you're using. Save that as an OBJ file and you can load that face scan and then you can create the shape of the face here. Now it's very important, this bottom section here where it says for color, use the Photo tab before this step. Because what will happen is when you use the Photo tab, it will remove all of that shape you've just created. So if you want a specific texture of a person, you want to do that first and then you want to do the face scan afterwards. Very, very important. So I'm going to click on load face scan here. I'm going to just get this Genesis 8 female here, which is basically a character that I've already got from DAZSTUDIO. I've just saved it as an OBJ file. I'm going to open that. And here it is. What you may find is that the character is not in the right place. It might be in a strange place, like everywhere, like here or something. So you might want to reset the view. You've got the controls here showing you how you can move the character around, move this head around. Hit the middle mouse button, I can drag it up and down, left and right if I've got my middle mouse button pressed here. If I left click, you can kind of like move it around. And it does kind of like get lost here where you're kind of moving it around, rotate it almost. I've got a reset view. And then if you use the right mouse button and you go move, keep the right mouse button pressed and you move up, it will move it further away. If you move it down, it brings it closer to you. So what we want to do is copy what's happening here. So copy these points. So I'm going to zoom in a lot more here so we can copy the points. So I'm going to copy these points here. It's giving you a reference here what to do. So you want the corner of the eye here. Then you want the inner eye here, which is going to be over here. Same here. So all I'm doing is just copying my reference points up here. Very straightforward, very easy. The mouth now, so I need to scroll it up. There we go. And somewhere around here. You know, you don't have to be perfect. You want to be roughly the area. You don't have to be right bang on in that area, so to speak. Just have it more or less in that area. There we go. So that's all the points it needs. Now I do create shape from mesh. Now when I press this button here, this shape will change here to meet this here. So when I do create shape from mesh, it's going to go and do the work for me, and there it is. Right there is the mesh. So if I zoom out on this, you will see it's very similar to the shape here in terms of the width of the shape of the face here, the way it comes down like this. Only from those 6 points here, it's figured out the shape of the face. Very powerful tool. So it's a great way, like I said earlier on, where you can take a shape you've got or a mesh you've got in a different program, save it as an OBJ, import it in here, and you can get the overall shape of that face. Now let's go to the New tab. What the New tab allows you to do is create a randomized face shape. So you can choose from any racial group here, all these options, any gender here. You can set the average, so this is like a starting point. And then you can use these sliders here to randomize and make it unique, to create a unique face shape. So let's say, for example, obviously my story is set in Japan, so I need an East Asian character, and the gender of that character, let's say I want male. Set the average, right? Set the average for that. So that looks like here, right here, looks like a male Asian, East Asian character. Now what I can do with these sliders is I can move them across. So I can move this first one across to typical and do generate here. And that's typical here. So I can keep doing generate here, and it will go through, it will like cycle through all those options and give you like unique faces all the time. Now we have asymmetry here. Something I highly recommend you put a little bit of asymmetry, because not everybody's face is symmetrical. I know my face isn't symmetrical. Even though it looks like it to me, there is some asymmetry there. Just like with your body, for example, one side of your body is stronger than the other. If you're right-handed, then your right hand's going to be stronger than your left hand. Or if you're left-handed, your left hand's going to be stronger than your right hand. So it's asymmetry there. So you can experiment with these sliders. So I can have a little bit of asymmetry here and do generate here. So it's still generating here. And then you've got color as well. So skin tone color. So you can go like really crazy here and generate like craziness here, where it goes like 2 beyond, where we've got monster here. Generate, and you can see that gets very, very strange with the skin tone there. So again, experiment with these dials. It's a great way to create unique characters. If you just want to create some unique characters, like asymmetry, I may even turn that down because I don't want too much asymmetry. And symmetrical shape, I can probably turn that up a bit to like character here, and you see like how crazy it kind of goes, right? It turns almost into like a cartoonistic style with the character kind of setting. So that could be something you want, right? That could be something you want. It's unique. It's not what you see a lot of the time. A lot of the time you see in DAZSTUDIO is very realistic faces. But if you want to go a little bit different, you know, want to stand out a little bit, you want to create a different kind of art style, for example, there's something you can do with this. So this is a great way just to create randomized shapes. Here, look, I've got a randomized shape. Looks pretty good. I would probably use this for like a bad guy character. I like the way this looks here. That's what the new tab does. It gives you a way to create a unique face shape just by using FaceGen's kind of like randomization algorithm that it has in the program. What I would say before we leave this new tab is just experiment with one slider at a time. Don't move all the sliders so you understand what each slider does. That's like a pro tip, is just move the symmetric shape slider here, do generate, and see what that looks like, and then move it a little bit more and see what that does. Then you'll get an idea of how it works, and then you can start to experiment with, say, the second slider here, the asymmetry, and be like, okay, what does this do now? So it's a great way to understand how something works, is you move one variable at a time. You understand how that variable works, and once you understand how that variable works, you can move on to the next variable, or in this case the next slider, and then you can start to create whatever shape you want to for your characters. Now we come to the photo tab, which is the meat and bones of this software. It is like the main purpose of this software. And basically what the photo tab is, you can use a reference photo and create the face shape from there. And it will also take the textures off that face shape and apply them here to FaceGen Artist Pro. And you can use those textures in DAZSTUDIO. So before you actually use a photo, here are some reference guidelines on what is expected or what doesn't work and which is not good. So this first one here, you don't want uneven lighting. You need even lighting. Second one here, you can't have any smiling, otherwise it's not going to work in your photo. Third one, don't wear glasses. So if you wear glasses, unfortunately you have to take them off when you're taking your photo. And then the fourth one here, your head is shifted 2 down, so it's got to be in a neutral pose. So in order to make the most of this program, you've got to have a photo that looks similar to this here from the front, and then you got the profile side here, you got the right side here, and then you got the left side. You want to have even lighting in order to make the most of this software, to get a good like scan and get the right textures. I'm going to click on load image here, and here I've got some Jason Statham photos that I've got from Google Images. So I went to Google Images and did a search for Jason Statham, and I found a few images that I feel like are going to be the best, the highest resolution I could find, and I'm going to use those. So that's what I've got these photos from. And we're going to start off with this one here, front one, because that's what I want. I'm going to do open here, and then we're presented with this screen here. Now it looks complicated. It is not complicated, I assure you. All we have to do is match these green points given in the example here on this particular image of Jason Statham. That's all I need to do. So I need to move these particular points. As I move my mouse closer to that point, the cursor changes to a hand symbol, and then I can left click and I can drag it where I need to. If the photo's too big, I can left click and drag wherever I need to. Right, making sure that my mouse is not on a green point, but it just is anywhere other than a green point, I can move it around so I can see what I need to do. I can zoom out if I need to, if it's too big, zoom out, or I could zoom in even more. I can rotate it if it's the wrong way, and I can rotate it back. That's all you need to know in terms of like navigating inside here, especially when you're doing the points. So let's start off with the points. This is very important. So the first points are going to be the eye centers. So I'm going to left click here and try and put it in the, central of the eye as I can, which is going to be the pupil. So you want to put it in as close to the pupil as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect, remember. Do not spend like hours trying to create this perfect face shape. You do the best you can. That's what it's all about. It's not a case of like, oh, I'm going to spend 30 minutes doing this perfect shape. You do the best you can. So the next part we are going to do is the outer edges of the cheekbones. So I'm looking for the outer edges of the cheekbones, which is kind of like here somewhere in this example. Depends on that person, depends on that character. Everybody's unique, everybody's individual. So the cheekbones are going to be higher or lower depending on how the structure of their bones are. So you do the best you can. You just line it up. Something like this. Then the next part is the outer edges of the nose flaps. So this is kind of like this area here somewhere. So you want to do it at the most outer edge point, which is kind of like here. There. Then the next one is mouth corners. So again, move this around, left click. I'm just left clicking and dragging, nothing fancy here. Just trying to get it into a rough area. The next section is the jawbone outer corners, which is somewhere here. Now this is sometimes difficult to do, especially when you have someone with like a beard. You have to like estimate. So I'm looking at this picture here as my reference guide here, and I think like the jawbone is almost where the lips are, where the corners of the mouth are. So it's going to be somewhere around here, roughly, something like that. I'm going to click here and then I'm going to drag down so I can see the bottom of the chin here. So bottom of the chin. Again, if it's like a beard, there's a reason why I am using this specific character with a beard, because this is a problem that I've been having and I found a solution to it, and that's why I'm going to share that solution with you as well in this tutorial, which will be in part 2 of this tutorial. So with a beard, sometimes you can't see the bottom edge, so you have to approximate roughly where is this bottom of the chin going to be. So I'm going to say it's somewhere around here. It's more or less central. And then all I need to do now is click done here at the bottom. Now, if you're not happy with the points here or you want to make adjustments, you just click on adjust points here and it allows you to move the points. So you go back here and start moving them around. You're like, hey, actually that needs to be slightly down, or that needs to be, this point here needs to be moved across here, or whatever you need to do. You can make those adjustments and then you can click done here. To make the most of this software, I highly recommend you get the side photos as well, the profile photos. Very important. Otherwise, you're just going to have like a flat face and you won't get the right textures and everything. You want to get the right shape. Do the best you can to get the right shape. So that's what we're going to be doing in this tutorial as well. So let's go and put the right side of Jason Statham's face now, so I can get the proper shape, proper like 3D effect of the shape. Whereas instead of just using this flat face here, it's very hard to get the right shape. So I'm going to click on load image here. I'm going to be using this one. Let's say you've only got one side of the face. What can you do then? Well, you can take it into any photo editing software. So I'm going to go into paint.net. I've got it here. And then all you need to do is mirror it. So if I go to image here and flip it, right now I've got the other side. I've got the left side of the face here. I save this and now I've got both sides. I've got both profile sides. I've got the left and the right, and we can carry on. So you don't have to have both sides. You can just have one side, flip it, and that's good enough, especially when we're using FaceGen. So that's a quick little tip there for you to use. So let's go back into FaceGen here. I'm going to use this one here. And again, we're given a similar screen here. However, there's a lot more points here and it looks very busy and it looks very intimidating. I assure you again, it is not intimidating. I'm going to show you where to put these points. So let me just drag these down here with the right mouse button here. Okay, so the first one we want to do is the celion. Now the celion is roughly the point of where the nose meets the kind of like forehead. So it's roughly around here somewhere. You'll notice there's like a bump on your nose here. Like when you come down from your forehead all the way down to where your nose is, that's where the celion is. It's just where the nose starts to begin the bone. That's where the celion is, somewhere down here. Again, you don't have to be like 100% accurate. Roughly in the general area will do. So that's the celion. Then the outer corner of the eye, which is very straightforward. We move that across here and it's roughly around here. the bridge of the nose. So that's normally the middle of the nose. So as you move your finger on your nose, you'll notice there's a bump there. Just before that bump, that's the bridge of the nose. So it's usually roughly around the middle-ish, sometimes slightly lower than the middle, but it's usually around here. You'll feel like there's a kind of like a bump there. Just before that bump on your nose, that's the bridge of the nose. Then we've got the tip of the nose, which is straightforward, which is like this bit here, right here with the tip of the nose. The kind of like most outer point of your nose here. Then the base of the nose. So the base of the nose is going to be just under here. Outer edge of the upper lip. So take this one here, outer edge of the upper lip, which is just here, right? Just at the top of that lip there. Outer edge of the lower lip. So the outer edge of the lower lip is just going to be somewhere here. Click here, I'm going to drag down so you can see the rest of the face here. Forward tip of the chin. Now this is where it gets a bit difficult, especially if you've got like a character with like a beard, like a really long beard. It's very hard. You have to again estimate where roughly the forward tip of the chin is. There we go. And then the lower edge of the jaw here. So usually if you look at this picture here, I'll find it very great reference here. The outer corner of the eye and the lower edge of the jaw are almost like right directly under it. So the lower edge of the jaw point is almost directly under where the outer corner of the eye. So you can use that as a reference point if you don't know, like there's too much beard hair here and you don't know where it is. So I would move it roughly around there as well. There we go. And that's all my points done. And I click done. And that's it. Again, if your points are not correct, you don't like the way they are, you can go to adjust points here and you can go back and readjust those as and when you need to. Click done. Now let's load the left side here. So here it is. This is the one that I went into paint.net and did the flip horizontal. So now I've got the other side and here is the image here. And all what I'm doing in this section is doing exactly what I did in the profile right side. Is I'm doing the same points, but I'm doing it for the left side. So I'm going to fast forward this section because we're just doing the same thing. And there we have it. That's the left side all done there. And all we do now is create from photos. So this is going to take a little bit of a while. Probably takes about 20 seconds to 30 seconds to do this. So what it's doing now is the program is analyzing both images, the frontal here and the profile, and it's going to create the shape here and use the textures as well. So this is what FaceGen has done by using the frontal photo and the side photos. This is what we've got. And if I left click and drag, you can see it doesn't look too bad in terms of the way the skin texture comes, because this skin is actually quite good quality here and the nose doesn't look too good, but we can fix that later on. So you can go back into each of these points here and fix them. Let's say you're not happy with something. Again, like I said, you can always go back and adjust the points here. This doesn't look too bad in terms of getting a pretty decent face scan of Jason Statham. What you may have noticed, there are two additional options here which you can use. So the first option, only use points from profile photos, useful if lighting differs from frontal. So what this will do is when you select it, it will only use the points from these here to create the shape. From the right here and from the left, it will use these points to create the shape, but it won't use the textures here. It will use the texture from the frontal. So let me show you what that looks like. So as you can see here, when we've ticked that option here, the nose looks a lot better now because it's using the points from here and it's using the texture from here as well. So you can see they're working in tandem now. We're getting the kind of like full 360-degree view of Jason Statham's face here, which is a lot better. The nose is fixed here and we're using the texture here from the frontal. So if I deselect this top one here and just use the bottom one here, which says use detail from profile photos, sometimes results in artifacts. So what this will do now is it will use texture only from the profile photos. It won't use a texture from here. It will use it from only from these profile photos. So let's create photos option and see what that looks like. So you can see here that the textures are being used from the profile now. You can tell from the beard here, because this beard here was darker. This is a lot more lighter here. So you can see that it is being used. You will sometimes get artifacts, so that's why I don't use this option a lot. My kind of like default option is to use the top one to get an overall image in terms of the face shape. So I get the face shape from these two and I get the texture from the main one here. That's where I like to use. Again, experiment with these options, see what works best for you in your situation and with the photos you're using with this program. So here's our face here, which I think looks pretty good. And what we're going to do now is move on to the modify tab and go through the rest of this program here, because there's a lot still you can do inside FaceGen before you even export it and use it in DAZSTUDIO. So let's click on the modify tab, and here we have a whole host of options here that we can use to change this shape as we want to of the face here. We can do a lot of things in here with FaceGen. Now, before you make any modifications, what I do highly recommend is that you save the shape, because to undo something takes a while. Like, you could do a maximum of 30 undos before it's locked. So if you make more than 30 changes to this shape, you won't be able to go back after 30. So very, very important. So I highly recommend you save that shape if you're like happy with like a base shape that you can work from. So to do that, we just need to go to File tab here. We go to Space here, and then you just go to Save As. And you just give it a name. So if I click on Save As here, you'll see I've got a whole host of them that I've saved here that I've been experimenting with here. And you just give it a name and you just save it. So that's what you would do there. Let's go back to the Modify tab here. So with our Demographics tab here, we can change the whole host of options here. So let's go through here. So you go into the age here slider. So as I move the age slider, I can reduce the age of my character. You can see it moving very slowly, and you'll notice that as I move the age character, some of these other sliders here, these dials, will start moving to compensate for that. So let's make him really old. So let's make him like 50 to 60 years old. You can see what it would look like. Right, those wrinkles are more pronounced here. So we've got a bit of issues there with morphing here in terms of this wrinkle here, this morph here. Probably reduce that a bit to remove that. We can see he's getting older now. He's got a bit more lower face. As you get older, your face kind of sags more, the skin sags more. So we're seeing that there, and you're seeing, like, you can see this bottom slider moving as well to compensate for that. So you can move that around. Gender, move the gender slider around, that you can see what happens. So you can make it more feminine if you wanted to. Again, you don't want to go too much, right? If you go too much, you can see what happens to the skin. It starts to create all these issues here with the artifacts here. So you want to be mindful of that when you're doing this. Or you can go like hyper male, right? He's like a proper Chad here, like hyper male here. That's very strong jawline here, very strong facial structures there. So you can experiment with that. Again, look, when I'm moving this, see how everything, other dials adjust to compensate for that. So that's really cool. You don't have to worry about, oh, I need to move this and then I need to move this other dial. No, the program does that all for you, which is really, really cool. And then we've got caricature here, which is the shape and the color. So I can move the shape here. So you can turn it into more characterized kind of like shape here, or you can make it more typical, or you can go all the way to the other side here. See how it changes here. You can go to Monsteraza if you want to. So that's to the extreme there. And then you've got the color here as well. So you can click on the color and you can change the color here. So you can make it a lot more darker here or a bit more lighter here. You can experiment with that. Asymmetry, again, very important. You want to have some sort of asymmetry here. So move that around. Maybe you don't want too much. Maybe you want the other side here. But you want some sort of asymmetry. Not too much, right? But you want maybe a little bit here. Then you got the really cool part here. Let's say you wanted Jason Statham, but you wanted to see what it looked like if he was from African descent. All right, so I'm going to move this African slider here, and you can see what it would look like. So you can see the typical like African features, the slightly larger nose here, the skin tone obviously changes, and all that great stuff is happening. So you can create some really unique characters using this demographics tab here, which you can experiment with this. Again, I highly recommend you experiment with this, have some fun with this. See what happens, see what you like, see what you don't like, and it's just really cool. Let's say I want to see Jason Statham as an East Asian. Well, let's have a look what that would look like and how will he look like. So that's kind of cool. You can experiment with that as well. Let's click on the interactive tab now in the modify section. So with the interactive tab, you are able to apply the changes directly onto this face here. So instead of using the dials here in all these other places, you're using the morphs that are in here. So it gives you the instructions here. Hold down Control key and then left click and drag any point to create a symmetrical change. So keeping the Control key pressed on my keyboard, left mouse button pressed here, and as I move up and down, you'll see the face change here. If I move right and left, it will start changing here, so it's symmetrical. If I did the same now, Control key, but with the right mouse button, it starts to be asymmetrical, which means you're not going to get the same symmetry. It's going to be asymmetrical, and you can experiment with that. Now, I don't like this version, but if you want to play around with this version, you want to experiment, that's fine. I don't like this. I like to have more control. I don't like the way this is being done here. Just I like to have more control over specific portions of the face here. So again, if you want to experiment with that, go ahead, have fun, and see what you like, and then keep that change if you like it. Now let's move on to the shape tab here. So here we've got two further tabs here. We've got symmetry here, symmetric or asymmetric. So this is going to be for symmetric change here. So let's say, for example, the cheekbones, I want to change the cheekbones. I want to make them higher, more pronounced, okay? And it's going to be symmetrical here, right? So it's going to, you'll see that as I move this, the other dials will compensate, which is really, really cool. So this is what I like about this program, is you don't have to worry about moving one dial and nothing else changes. It all compensates to the change that you want to make, which is really, really cool. So I can really experiment with this cheek here. I can look, because of the cheekbones are lower, the eyes are getting bigger now, a bit more cartoon eyes there. So that's really cool. If I go all the way down here, you can see there's lots of options here. So you've got brow, cheekbones, chin here, you've got eyes. So I can make the eyes up and down. So let's make the eyes lower on the face, or I can make them higher on the face. There's so much you can do with this program here. There's a lot of options in here, keeping you very busy. So there's a lot of changes you can make in here if you didn't have particular morphs in DAZSTUDIO. This does a lot of this kind of like morphing procedure. And if you didn't have ZBrush, or you're not very good in morphing with Blender or anything like that, this gives you that option. It gives you that flexibility, which is what I really like about this program. So anybody who wants to change something, but you don't want to go into like Blender and do that change, or ZBrush, or even if you haven't got the morphs in DAZSTUDIO, you can do a lot of that kind of like changes that you want to make in FaceGen. So that's really, really cool here. That's what I like about this program. There's a lot in this program that helps you get the face shape that you want. Then we've got the asymmetric option as well. Let's click on that, which is straight away, which is going to be the asymmetry, right? So it's going to be one side or the other. So for example, if we do cheekbones here, protrusion asymmetry. So if I move that, you'll see the cheekbones moving one side to the other. Now let's say if it's moved too much, you want to mirror it, you press the mirror button and it will do the opposite. Mirror it again and it will go back to the original. So let's say you've moved something and you're like, oh, it's too much, it's doing it to the right. So for example, let's do eyes height disparity, and you see the eyes kind of like shifting, and you're like, oh, let me mirror that, see what would that look like on the other side if I want to like that. So you can shift it as well, which is really, really cool. And then you got set all to 0, which is available for symmetric and asymmetric, and that just puts all the dials back to 0. So set all to 0, it goes back to the default settings. So it goes back to the default settings, and you can start from scratch if you want to. So that's all that shape tab does. Very powerful in terms of helping you to create the shape you want to and creating that unique face character shape. Let's go to the color tab here now. With the color tab, we can change the skin tone of the face now, so we can change the specific areas. So for example here, beard, flushed, pale. So we can move this dial around and you can see it change here, right? You can see that going more lighter tone here to the right, and then again, or a bit more darker tone here to the right if you want to change the color there. So you can change the different types of beard colors here. The eye socket, you can make it bruised or bright. So it's bright eye socket, or it's bruised, right? Like somebody like hasn't got enough sleep or something, or it's really dark, kind of like those panda eyes as I like to call them. So you can experiment with this. There's eyebrow color, eyebrow, like you can change all these options. Now you don't want to go too extreme because it will look very, very strange. So you want to play within those specific parameters. Eyebrows thick and thin, you can make them thin, you make them thick here. Again, this is great if you want to just shore up the color. I wouldn't worry too much about the color because you can control that when you are exporting. So when you're exporting the textures, you can control that in iRay anyway, or you can control that in your favorite photo editing software. When you're going to go and edit those textures, you can change the color as well there as well. So you can do it in here if you want to. I don't generally do that. I prefer to have more control outside of FaceGen, where I can control it through the iRay shader inside DAZSTUDIO or through Photoshop. And again, set all to 0 will just default everything back to 0. So that's the 0 kind of like color there. That's the 0 skin tone there as well. Let's click on the texture tab. With the texture tab here, we've got a few options. So we've got some preset textures here that comes with FaceGen. If you scroll down, there's a fair bit here that you can choose from. So obviously if we've got a male character, we would choose male here. But if you wanted to experiment, you can go to the female tab here and be like, hey, what would Jason Statham's face or face shape look like if we had a female texture skin on there? Let's have a look. So you can experiment with that as well. You've got the detail modulation strength here. So if I go to male here and if I pick something like this texture here, if I turn it up, you will see that it gets a lot more heavy in terms of the strength of that detail that's on the face. Now obviously this is not the best, like for example texture, but you can see like when I decrease it, the detail of that particular texture is a lot less. So if I increase it, it's going to be a lot. So if I choose a better one here, pick up one like that, you can see like the pimples stand out more, these lines stand out more, this stands out more. So it's almost like applying a normal map. It feels like it's like a normal map and it's applying it to this software, and you can see like those details are more pronounced. So you can experiment with that as well. Then you got this option none here, which basically when you click none, it will go back to the default. So it will remove the texture here. So any textures you've applied here, any texture that you had from your create portion here, from the photo here, all gone, right? You remove that. That's why I highly recommend you save your base texture that you've created using the photo here, because you won't be able to go back to that. So that's why I did advise that you save it before you do any modifications. Very important. So I'm gonna put this one here. We'll just pick this one here, an example. So that's it, and you can see the increase and the decrease here of the detail in that preset face texture. Next, we've got the Tween tab here. So what this Tween tab here is, basically you can take another FaceGen shape that you've created and you can create like a midpoint and see what it will look like. So for example, let me show you how this works. So I'm going to click on load target. I'm going to load, for example, Idris Elba's face here, which looks like this. The shape of it anyway, not the skin, the shape of it. And then you can change the symmetry of the shape. You can see it starts moving. The more I move towards one, the more it goes towards the shape of that target face. So the more extreme I keep going, the more extreme it keeps going. So you're almost like taking what you've got in terms of your shape here, and you're trying to get a midpoint between this as well. So you kind of like a halfway, you can see what it looks like. So I can create the asymmetry as well of that shape using that. See how it's very subtle, but it's there. And you can change the color as well. So I can move the color and say, hey, actually I want it to look more like the color of this target face here. And finally, we're on the genetic tab here. And what this does is it creates variations of this face. So at 0.1 variation, I click generate. It's going to give me 9 different variations of that face. Now, the higher variation I have, so the higher degree, let's say 0.4, and I do generate, you'll see a lot more different variations in terms of the nose, the mouth, the skin tone, and all that kind of cool stuff. So it's almost like you can see genetic variations there, which is kind of cool. So let's say you're happy with the way this looks, but you want to see any other variations you can get from here, just to see if you can find something unique that the FaceGen program can come up with. So again, you can keep clicking generate, and at that 0.4 variation, it will give you new faces, and you decide, say, okay, I like the way this face looks, so I'm gonna click on that. Now I'm gonna have that face shape there. Or I like the way this face shape looks, I'm gonna have that face shape there. I like that genetic variation. There's multiple ways to create unique shapes. There's almost unlimited options on how you can create face shapes here. So very powerful program FaceGen is. So let's go through a few of the other options before we get to the export section, which I want to talk about as well. So the undo tab here. So with the undo button here, it gives you a great description here of what it does. It just undoes the last face edit. That's the morph, not the expression or the texture. It will leave the texture as it is. So as I click undo, the texture will stay the same. It will not move. It will just undo the previous 30 edits that I did. So it'll go back to 30 iterations. If I keep going undo, it'll go back 30 times, and after that it will stop. See, I can't do any more, and that's it. You can redo those 30 if you want to, or the last 5, 10, whatever you want to do. So let's say like, hey, actually I like this image here. I've gone back. So that's why I highly recommend you save before you do any iterations. Before you make any changes in the modify tab, always save, always keep a backup just in case, because you may have found a face you liked and you want to go back to that base shape. Very important. Then we click on the view tab. Now all the view tab is it just changes the way things look on the screen. It doesn't really do anything in terms of texturing or in terms of modifying anything. So for example here, the camera tab here, you can do the orthographic view, you can change that the way it looks. Or you can change the relative scale so you can move it back and forward. It doesn't really affect your texture, it doesn't affect your export or your morph. It's just the way it looks in this portion of FaceGen. So it doesn't really do anything in terms of that. So I can reset the camera to the original settings. Again, render here, this doesn't do anything as well. So all this does is it just changes the way it looks on here. So for example, you can make the render shiny here. You could do none here, right? So there's no color map here, or you can put the color back on, the texture back on. You can add the red background if you want to, or you can add a green background or anything like that. Again, it doesn't change anything. It's just the way it looks here in the view. You can add foreground transparency if you want to here. If you wanted to load an image, you can do that as well. So that's all that does here. And the lighting, same thing with the lighting. You click on the lighting tab and it just changes the lighting, right? It just changes the lighting in terms of the way it looks. Again, it adds nothing to the texture or anything like that, or any export like that in terms of your skin texture. It doesn't do nothing. It's just the way it looks in this particular part of the screen. So I would leave that alone. I don't touch that at all. Just leave it as is. So that's the view tab there with all those settings. So let's click on file here, and I'm going to go to my face tab, and I want to open up the Jason Statham face that I saved earlier on. So I'm going to open up that one. Looking pretty good there. Let's click on the export tab now so we can use this texture and the shape inside DAZSTUDIO. So let's click on export here. And now we have a whole heap of options inside here. So let's go through them for you. The DAZSTUDIO export group is where the morph will be located. So when you go and click on your character in the scene tab, you go to the shape tab and then you click on the head parameter. In the head parameter, you will find this FaceGen parameter. I would leave that as it is, leave that as FaceGen, so you know that that morph that you've created is from FaceGen, so it's easy to find inside DAZSTUDIO. Next, we've got DAZSTUDIO export name. So this is the name you want to give your morph. What name do you want to give your morph? So in this case, I'm going to write JS3 because I've got a Jason Statham 1 head morph, I've got a Jason Statham 2 head morph, and this one will be the third one. So that's the name of the morph, or the parameter's name, which you can dial up and down. And then you have all the Genesis options to export the character to. So you can have all the way from Genesis 1 to Genesis 9, you can export that morph too. So because I use Genesis 8 and Genesis 9, I will go through both of them. So let's start off with Genesis 8 here. Then you get these options here for Genesis 8. You'll also get these options here for Genesis 8.1, 3, 2, and 1 here, which is this morph that you're creating for a male character or a female character? So you could create a face morph that's female and put it on a female character. So you could do that if you want to. In this case, I'm not going to. It's a male character. And then you need to choose where you want to export the morph. So I've got a lot of libraries here. So you might only have one, maybe this one here on your Windows here. So your main Windows DAZ3D library might be there. These are all the ones that I've added in DAZSTUDIO, which is why they show up here. So if you added additional content libraries, these are the ones that will show up here for FaceGen because it sees them as a DAZSTUDIO content library. So I'm going to save it in the F drive here, which is my current working drive that I'm using as my testing ground for these morphs. So I'm going to use F drive here, that's fine. Then you've got this option here, spherical eyes, eye color maps may not match eyelids. Now with this one, I don't usually tick this because we're not going to be concerned too much with the spherical eyes because we're going to be using some of the original Genesis 8 male eyes, and this is not going to be a problem. So I wouldn't tick this anyway, just because I don't want this issue here. But again, experiment with this, tick this box, maybe it works out for you. But in my experimentations, I feel like this doesn't need to be ticked at all. It doesn't provide any use here, this option here, but it's there for a reason. But my experimentation, like I said, I haven't found it to be useful. Then you got to select the color maps here. So what color maps do you want to use? So you got three options here. If you select none, all that will happen is it will just create the morph. So when you click export here, it will just create the morph called JS3. It won't create any maps. It won't create any textures for the face, for the arms, for the legs, for the torso. It won't do any of that. For the eyes, it won't do anything like that. It will just do the morph. So if you just want a morph, then you just click none, and you're going to use a texture from another character in DAZSTUDIO. That's fine, you can do that. Then you got the middle option here, which is default G8M base. So in this case, if I selected this option and I did export, it's going to create the morph and it's going to create the textures using the default Genesis 8 male base as its base. So it's going to go to the Genesis 8 male base texture, look at that, and then use that as its base to create the face texture, the arms, the legs, the eyes, and everything like that. And then we've got custom here, which is C below. So with custom, what you can do is if you know you've got a Genesis 8 character, an existing character, you like the Genesis 8 textures for that character, you can add that there. So you can click on the face here and go to the diffuse map for that character and add it on, or the arms, or the legs, or the torso. You can do that, and you can use that as a base if you like that texture. So in this case, I'm not going to be doing that in this tutorial. We're going to be doing that for the female character, which I'll do after this. So I'm going to choose the default Genesis 8 base, and I'm going to click export now. So what FaceGen's going to do now is going to create that morph for me, and it's going to export all of the files. And then it gives you all that information here. So your new morph has been saved in this location here. So it's in the F drive, in the data folder, DAZSTUDIO folder, Genesis 8 folder, male, morphs, FaceGen, and then the name of that morph, which is JS3, which is exactly what I called it over here. So let's say if I wanted to delete it, I wasn't happy with it, I know where to delete it, I know exactly where it is. And then it gives you the instructions on how to apply the face. So it tells you how to apply the face here, which is basically you load the Genesis 8 male character, the base male character, you apply the shape of the head, tells you where the head is as well. So look, shaping parameter in the editor section, Genesis 8 male, and then the head, that's where this JS3 is stored, and then you can dial it up to how much you want to dial it up to. Tells you where the color maps are saved here, so it's going to be in the F drive, runtime folder, textures folder, FaceGen folder, Genesis 8M folder, and then JS3 folder, which is the name of the morph, and then it will have all the files in there. And then again, it gives you instructions on how to apply them as well in the surfaces of Genesis 8. Now let's jump over to Genesis 9 tab here to show you how it works for Genesis 9. So again, with the Genesis 9 tab, it looks slightly different to Genesis 8. You'll see a few options are missing here. So with the Genesis 9 tab here, again, choose the DAZ content library you want to save the files in. Again, it's going to be F drive for me, or whatever drive that is for you. Then you got two options here. You got the shape tab, or you've got the color tab. So when you click the shape tab and you click export face shape to DAZSTUDIO, that's all it's going to do. It's going to export this face shape here, this Jason Statham 3 face shape here with JS3 as a name of the export name of that morph. And it's just going to export the shape only. So if you want to export the shape, click export the shape, and that's done that. It will give you some instructions on how to do that, how to apply the shape morph, how to apply whatever you need to do, apply the shape in Genesis 9 and how that works. So those instructions there. And then we've got the color tab here. So with the color tab here, you've got a few options here. So you've got here, adjust colors for IRA rendering. Now this one I've been experimenting with, and it's very interesting because for some reason when you tick this option here, the textures that come out look very strange. So I'm going to show you that right now. So in terms of what it actually looks like. And I found that personally from my experimentation, that to have like really good skin, I like to turn this off. I don't think this adds to it. I think it just makes the skin look a bit strange, but I'm going to show you examples right now of what it looks like with and without this option. So here we have the IRA adjusted color texture maps that I want to show you. So on the left hand side here, these are the non-IRA settings, which is basically when I go to FaceGen, it's with this option not ticked. And then when this option is ticked, this is what we get on the right here. So in the middle, you'll see the lighting settings that I use. So you can see what it looks like in terms of lighting. Like I've just done very basic lighting. I've used the dome here, the dome lighting, which is dome only. And I've just used the original dome that comes with DAZSTUDIO. I haven't added any of the extra lighting. So that's what it looks like with non-IRA and then the IRA adjusted. So some of you might like the one on the left. Some of you might like the one on the right. You can always adjust this inside DAZSTUDIO using the IRA shader. So let's say you went with this one, but you didn't like the specific skin tone. You can always do that inside DAZSTUDIO. So that's not an issue. So you decide whether you like which one you like. So this is the Jason Statham 3 Genesis 9 kind of like version here. But you're probably thinking, what about different skin tones, Palmy? What about if we had a darker skin tone? What would that look like with the non-IRA and the IRA adjusted option? So here we have the kind of like Idris Elba one that I was working on. So on the left side here is the non-IRA version textures, and then on the right side we've got the IRA adjusted from FaceGen here. You can see it's got more like of a green tinge here, and that one's more a bit more reddy here. Again, you can adjust this inside DAZSTUDIO. You can change the subsurface scattering, you can change the skin tone to nowhere inside DAZSTUDIO. That's up to you to decide which one you like. And then now you might be thinking, well, Palmy, what about if we had a really light skinned person? Like the skin tone was like really white. What would we do then? Like really Caucasian skin. What would it look like with that? So let me show you what that would look like. So here we have a character with very pale skin here. So this is the non-IRA textures that came out of FaceGen, and this is the IRA adjusted. You can see how much difference it makes. It's very green here. It's looks very unusual here, and then we've got the non-IRA here. So this is very important. It depends on the skin tone as well of your character, how this IRA adjustment will work out. Now, I don't like this here. This doesn't look very good. But one thing I have noticed is when you use the IRA adjusted option inside FaceGen, you can see the eyes here. They look different, right? They look a lot more closer to the original photo that I used of this female actress here. Whereas the one on the left here, the eyes look very different in terms of the non-IRA texture that came out for Genesis 9. So I found that the eyes, when you use the IRA adjusted textures from FaceGen, are more accurate to the photograph that you use when you're creating the face shape. So that's something to think about when you are deciding which version to use in terms of IRA adjusted or non-IRA adjusted. Again, experiment, definitely requires experimentation. Highly recommend you check this out. What I will do is put these images in the link in the description down below. You can download them and have a look yourself, see how they look on your monitor, and then you decide which is the best option for you. Back in FaceGen now, so I'm going to leave this adjust colors for eye rendering as it is unchecked. And then we've got two options here. So we've got the DAZ tab here, which means you have to choose a body material to base your textures on for Jason Statham here. So obviously he's masculine and he's Caucasian skin, so I'm going to choose that one here. You could choose any of these and experiment with these and see what they look like, but I'm going to choose that. You can even go feminine if you want to. That's up to you. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to choose Genesis 9 masculine skin, which is a Caucasian skin here. Now, if I click on the custom though, I can customize the base map. So I can go and click on the particular head map, the particular arm, the body, the legs, and the eyes, and then it will use this as a base texture for the creation of the textures for this particular face here that I've got the image here and everything. So it will use that. So if you wanted to use a Genesis 9 character that you like the textures, you love the textures, and you want to use those textures as for your FaceGen character, you can do that. You can apply those here and you can use that. Of course you can do that. So in this case, we're going to be using the default Genesis 8 and default Genesis 9 textures that come with DAZSTUDIO. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to click export and it's going to go ahead and export that for me now. So here it gives us a lot of information on how to apply the textures, what to remove, and how to apply everything. Because when you're applying textures, when you're applying the textures for Genesis 9, there's actually just like a preset you press, which is really cool. Whereas with Genesis 8 and 8.1 and any other of these, you have to manually go to the surface, go to that particular texture, browse to it, and then find it. Whereas with Genesis 9, there's just like a preset. You just double click and it applies those textures. Really cool, very useful. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my female character. So let me go and do that now. I'm going to show you because I'm going to use custom maps for that character to show you what it looks like, especially when it comes to fixing the textures, because there's a different procedure with that. So let me go to face here. Let me open Yvonne Strakowski. Probably spelled that name wrong, butchered that name, but here we go. So this is the actress Yvonne Strakowski, who was actually in Mass Effect 2. I believe she was one of the characters in Mass Effect 2. And she was in a program called Chuck. So that's my FaceGen there. I'm going to go to export here. I'm going to do the Genesis 8 version first. So let me just start over here. So let me, the DAZ export name for this one is going to be YS3. That's what I'm going to call it, the morph. She's a female character, so click on the female tab. It's going to be in the F drive. And I'm going to use custom here. So these are the custom ones I'm going to be using here. So what I've done is I've copied this from where this was located in my original runtime textures folder, just so I don't overwrite them by accident. So when I'm going into Photoshop and I'm going to be making the changes, I want to make sure I don't accidentally delete them or anything like that or overwrite them. So that's why I've specifically made a copy and just pasted it and created a folder and put it into my F drive here. And it's very straightforward. All you need to do to use this as a custom base is you click on face here, and then here's my character here, and you double click. You basically browse to where the character's textures are and you just add them. So AI diffuse here, go to the arms, add the arms, and so on and so forth. Legs, go to the legs, and the torso, go to the torso, which is going to be, there it is. That's all you have to do in this case. Very simple, very straightforward, and it's going to use the character that's called AI as its texture as a base. And I do export and it's going to do that for me. And again, we get the similar instructions here on how to apply everything, which is very similar to what we had before. Now we're going to do the Genesis 9 shape and the textures. So let's go to the shape here and start over here. Yes, Genesis 9 F drive, again, that's where I want to save it. The shape, yes, it's called YS3, that's fine. Export the shape to DAZSTUDIO. And again, the instructions on how to apply that and where it's saved. Then go to the color tab here, start over. And here, I'm going to click on custom here because I want to create a custom here. Now, I haven't got many Genesis 9 characters. I've only got Victorian 9 and Olympian 9 at the moment. Just experimenting with them. So again, you would go click on head here. You would browse to wherever that textures are saved of that character. I've copied them because I don't want to like delete them by accident or overwrite them. So I've copied them to my F drive here. And I'm just going to go and find the specific texture. So the first one is head here. So I'll scroll down to where it says head, which is going to be here. So they are named here actually, like head D for diffuse 1001. So that's there. And you can see how they're named here. So arms D, diffuse 1004. And then body F, diffuse 1002. And then legs D, 1003. You can see they all match up. Now for the eyes, you will have to go to the original folder where the eyes are saved. So what I've done here is, if I go to the G9 base here, I've actually copied and pasted the eyes here. Now it doesn't matter what color eyes you use. So when I open this texture, you will see that the eyes are brown. It doesn't matter what is the base texture of the eyes here because it doesn't use that color. What it does, it uses this as a reference point to create the map for the eyes for Genesis 9. So we're going to use that one there. because you can see here the eyes color here is kind of like a blue color. That's what it will come out with. It won't come out with brown. So you can use any texture here you want to regarding the eyes. It's just like a reference point. So FaceGen knows, oh, that's the eye map here. All I gotta do is put the eye texture on this and that's your texture done. That's what it uses that. And here now I'm just gonna click export diffuse color maps to DAZSTUDIO. And then we get the similar instructions here on how to apply the materials, which is very similar to what we had before. So you're probably very excited. You've just created your first FaceGen head morph and you've exported the materials. So you're very excited. You want to jump into DAZSTUDIO. But before we do that, there are some problems with the textures that FaceGen creates, and I want to address those first. Before we even go into DAZSTUDIO, let's address those issues first. Let's work on those problems, and then we can jump into DAZSTUDIO and be more efficient with our time. Instead of just going straight into DAZSTUDIO because you're excited, you're going to apply those textures and realize the textures don't work. You'll have to go back into your favorite photo editing software and address those concerns. Let's do it properly the first time, right? Let's not waste our time. Let's be more efficient. Let's be more methodical in our approach when we are using FaceGen and creating those textures. So here we are in Photoshop, and I'm going to show you now the textures that come out of FaceGen. So the first one we're going to look at is the Genesis 8 female texture that we exported from FaceGen. So let's have a look at those. So Genesis 8 female. So this is the arms here, much as you would expect. These are the textures that you would expect from DAZSTUDIO. So remember, we were using the AI character textures as a base for this. So these are the AI textures, and what FaceGen has done is use that as a base to create these textures. So these are the AI characters materials that we are basing our export on for this Genesis 8 female character. So that's the torso there. Here are the legs. And here is where the problems arise. Look at the face here. What do you notice about the face? There are quite a few problems with this face that you need to address before we even think about going into DAZSTUDIO. So the first problem is this right here, which is going to be the chin area here. That is a problem that you will get when you're creating your character inside FaceGen. You will get this issue. I'm going to show you how to resolve this issue here. So this is not very good. It doesn't look very flattering to this character at all. So we need to address that. The second thing we need to address is the eyelids here. If you look at the eyelids here, if your character closes their eyes and the lids come down, this is what the texture will appear. This texture will appear here. We do not want that whatsoever. So we need to address that as well for both of the eyes, obviously here. Then the nose here needs addressing a little bit. So this kind of like section here needs to be addressed as well. And then if I zoom in a little bit more, you will see that the lips need to be addressed as well. See the lips here? You can see like the kind of sharp edges here. We need to remove the sharp edges here because when your character opens their mouth, the lips as well, they're going to have these sharp edges here. So we need to fix that as well. And also the top here, for some reason, I don't know why the eyes are here, but we need to address this as well. This should not be like this at all. So we need to address that on the map, on the texture as well. So there's lots we need to do with this particular texture. And this is what I'll be going through for this character in part 3. So in part 3, you will see me addressing this because it requires a different process to remove all that. So especially the bottom bit here, it requires a different process to what I'm going to do with the Genesis 8 male and Genesis 9 male characters. So that will be happening in part 3. So let's go on to the eyes. So these are the eyes here that come out of the texture for FaceGen. As you can see, they look very wrong. So what we need to address here is the pupils here don't always match up right to the center here. So this needs to be addressed as well. So on the right here is the Genesis 8 female eyes, right? These are the textures that have come out of that FaceGen. On the left are the Genesis 8 female textures from the Genesis 8 female character, right? Your standard character, that's the texture. See what we need to do? We need to fix a lot of this to make it even look anything like this. So that's what we will be addressing in part 3 as well. There's a lot of work to be done. That's if you want to keep these eyes, right? If you want to keep these actual eyes here, the ones that you created from your photo from FaceGen, then there's a lot of work to do there. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well in part 3 for Genesis 8 female. So let's move on to Genesis 9 female using the same character that we had, the same FaceGen textures that came out of that. Let me show you what that looks like. So with Genesis 9, you're going to get a lot of textures that's going to help you. So here are the legs here, the subsurface scattering legs SSS map. Then you've got the normal legs map as well. Then you've got the body SSS map. Then you've got the body map here as well, which look exactly the same. There's not much difference to it. Got the arms SSS here, and then you've got the normal arms map as well, which looks exactly the same as the arms SSS. Now here is where the problems arise. So here we've got the head, and you'll notice very familiar problem that we've got with the head for the Genesis 9 female from the FaceGen Textures. So what do you notice? Again, very similar kind of thing here. You've got the problem with the chin here. So again, we've got to address this problem here. Got a similar problem with the nose here, the eyelids as well. So if your character closes their eyes, they're gonna have this hair there, and that doesn't look right. So we need to address that as well. And then you've got the lips here as well. So you can see a common theme here between the textures between Genesis 8 textures that come out of FaceGen and Genesis 9 textures that come out of FaceGen. You can see a common fault here that we need to address with this Genesis 9 texture as well. So if I zoom back out, fit to screen here, you can see we've got this issue as well here with this section at the top, which needs to be addressed as well. And then finally we've got the eyes here, and lo and behold, we don't have to do anything with the eyes. The eyes are actually the way it should be. So the texture for the eyes for Genesis 9 are correct, so we don't have to touch that, which is fantastic. So that's one of the positive things I like about FaceGen for Genesis 9. The eye maps or the textures are exactly what the eye textures look like for your standard Genesis 9 character. So now let's move on to the Genesis 8 male character, Jason Statham, my character that we were doing. Let's have a look at the maps for that. So this is Genesis 8 male. So here are the legs, here's the torso, here's the arms, and here is the problem with FaceGen for, especially when you have a photograph and the character's got a beard. This is the problem you're going to have. What can you see straight away? What can we see straight away what the problem is? Look at the beard. It's all like fuzzy, blurry. We need to address that. We need to fix that, because if that texture, you took that straight into DAZSTUDIO, it's going to look horrendous, right? We don't want that. We want to do our best work. So we need to address this here. And I'm going to show you how to do that in part 2. And again, we need to address the eyelids here. So have a look at the eyelids here. When the character closes their eyes, that's what it's going to look like, the lids, their eyelids. That's not good enough. We need to fix that as well. The nose as well we need to fix, and the lips as well here. It's very like sharp edges here. We need to smoothen that out, and we need to fix that. Again, look at the top here. We need to fix this as well here. For some reason, the eyes are there. They shouldn't be there. So those are the fixes we need to do for that. Now the eyes are just as bad with Genesis 8 male as it was with that Genesis 8 female. So let me show you the eyes here. So this is the Genesis 8 eye texture here, which is the normal eye texture that Genesis 8 male uses here. So you can see we need to make a lot of adjustments here. There's still a lot of changes we need to make here, and I'm going to show you how to do that in part 2 as well. So the eyes are always an issue with FaceGen, requires a lot of work, but don't worry, I'm going to show you how to fix that. And finally, let's go and have a look at our Genesis 9 male Jason Statham 3 maps. Let's have a look at the textures. So these are the legs here. So those are the leg texture. This is the body texture here. You've got the arms here, so looking very familiar. And then here is the problem where it arises again. The head. What do you notice about the head again? Well, we've got the same problem here with the beard. We need to address that here. It's still blurry here. You've got the eyelids issue here as well. You've got the nose here we need to resolve here. We've got the lips as well. And we've got this top section here that we need to resolve as well here. So very familiar fixes we need to do here way before we even go into DAZSTUDIO. So that's what we're going to be doing in part 2. We're going to be addressing these issues for the Genesis 8 male and Genesis 9 male textures that have come out of FaceGen. And then in part 2, what we're going to do is take those textures, apply them into DAZSTUDIO. We're going to fix the skin as well. I'm going to show you the method that I use to fix the skin, so you can add that to your tool set. So we're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff in part 2. So if you found this video helpful, if you liked this video, hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any more future videos that are going to help you. And definitely don't want to miss out on part 2 and part 3, because this is definitely going to help you improve your skill set. And don't forget to leave a comment down below as well. If you have any questions, queries, or you want to learn more, leave a comment down below. And if you're interested in an entertaining, empowering, and inspiring superhero story, then head on to the Kickstarter campaign, sign up, get notified. Link is in the description down below. Until the next video, always be learning.